Welcome to A Parent's Guide to Child Development. I'm your host, Anna Marie Von Furley from Fledgling's Flight. Each podcast, we strive to give parents the tools they need to help their child thrive through conversations with experts in child development and psychology, where you can learn about the most important information that you didn't know existed. Today's episode is all about you, more specifically, your sleep. If you're a parent running on fumes, you're not alone. Sleep deprivation is one of the most common and overlooked struggles of early parenthood, with serious implications for both physical and mental health. But the good news, there's a science to better sleep, and help is within reach. Joining us is pediatric sleep consultant Diana Zales, who brings research-based, compassionate approach to helping families rest easier. Certified through the Center of Pediatric Sleep Management, Diana specializes in creating personalized, evidence-based sleep plans that are safe, effective, and sustainable. We'll be digging into the biology of infant and parental sleep, when and how to sleep train, and whether you really have to choose between breastfeeding and a good night's rest. So grab your coffee, just one cup this time, and let's get into it. Welcome, Diana. So excited to talk to you about this subject.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you as well.
I know, and sleeping. Speaking of sleeping better, I've been up since 5 this
Oh
morning,
my goodness.
so I'm already sleep deprived.
Hopefully it wasn't, the kids keeping you up.
Oh no, I have a 16-year-old now, but I feel like I haven't had a good night's sleep since I got pregnant 17 years ago.
Very
Where were
fair.
you when I was, pregnant and had my child when he was young?
I wish I could have been there to help as well.
All right, so let's dig in. So, what does healthy sleep? Try that again. What does healthy sleep look like for babies, toddlers, and parents?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's the biological aspect of it, which, especially during developmental periods, there's a certain amount of sleep that's necessary as we age and as we get older. And newborns, you're in the hospital, and those first couple of days, baby could be sleeping for at least 20, 22 hours. And then as the months go on, that amount gets a little bit less and less until, up through our adult ages and beyond, where the sleep needs just continue to kind of decrease little by little. Of course, in the first year, especially, that's pretty rapid of a change, especially as baby is growing, developing. And this continues all throughout toddler years, which is why, eventually around like 3, 4, baby might not even need a nap, or toddler might not need a nap anymore. And then as adults, a nap is always great, but it's not necessary. But even beyond the biological part of it, the way that I think of healthy sleep at any age is, how are you when you're awake? So if your baby is awake and waking up happy, alert, that shows me that baby's well rested. Or toddler, or any age. I say baby because you have so many more naps as a baby, but this really carries on through anyone. Even I'm sure if you're waking up at 5 a.m. and you're cranky, maybe maybe it's not enough sleep. But regardless, at any age, if you're waking up happy or at least content and not super cranky or crying, it tells me that you're well rested. And then this continues through your wake periods of the day as well. If you're able to focus, kind of emotionally regulate a bit, that tells me you're also having those safe and healthy sleep habits.
Awesome. How much sleep do children need at each stage of development?
Yeah, this varies. I'm sure, anyone could also like Google this or chat GPT it at this point. But what I really look for is, I also give every family that I work with a sheet, and it kind of breaks it down by month for the first 2 years. But what I also say is, kind of going back to my last point, I always say, look a month beyond and a month behind what's listed on, whatever you're looking up, because every child has different sleep needs. So as I was saying, these needs could range from, 4 naps a day when they're up to like 3 months old. And then maybe at 3 months, they can drop a nap and go to 3 naps, but some maybe need more. So it really depends on the child and the child's needs.
Yeah, I think that my son, like, he slept adult hours since he was born, between like 8 to 9 hours of sleep. And then the doctor would be
Mhm.
like, he should be sleeping about 14 hours a day. I'm like, well, tell him that because
Yeah, exactly. And that's something I want to stress to parents as well too. We could do what we can to set our child up for sleep, but it's their job to take the sleep that they need. We can't force them to be asleep or fall asleep. So, but what we can do is help them, kind of set them up for success. And I don't want anyone to compare either to, what other families are doing or what they're reading, which is also why I say, like, give it a wider window, because if your child is happy, if your child is, developing and functioning properly in their wake times, then I'd say, they're getting the sleep that they need.
What are the biological reasons behind night wakings in infants?
That's a great question too. So night wakings at any age are common. Even as adults, we're waking up in the night. It's just how they're handled. So this is something that I find really interesting in the newborn phases. And I might get a little sciencey, but I don't want to get, too sciencey. I'll get a little sciencey with it. But it's really interesting because when a baby is born, their sleep cycles are about 50 minutes long. And to put that into perspective, adult sleep cycles are 90 to 110 minutes long. And so as they get older, the sleep cycles will lengthen as their sleep gets more mature. But when they're born, especially in like the first 3-4 months, before their like circadian rhythm is developed, especially, they have 2 different cycles of sleep, whereas adults have 5 cycles of sleep going from light sleep through REM, and they kind of fluctuate in between throughout the night. Babies, newborns have 2 cycles, active sleep and quiet sleep. So this is also kind of interesting because when a baby is going between the cycles and like when they're in the more active sleep, they kind of have a few minutes of like an arousal period, I guess you could call it. So in this time, that's when like you hear like baby might be fussing or, a little restless, tossing and turning. And now this is where it's like up to the parents to see how they handle it. Because sometimes what will happen is a parent might mistake this for the baby being awake and needing to be soothed and needing to be helped back to sleep. But what they're really doing is waking the baby up by going in and picking the baby up. So a lot of it is kind of like the perception of the waking, but also it is definitely like a biological difference between adults and newborns.
Oh, so fascinating.
Yeah, right.
All right. So this is my favorite question I'm going to ask you is how does sleep deprivation affect parental mental health and decision making?
Oh my goodness, it's everything. It's everything. I mean, sleep, I you can't function properly if you're not rested. And 5 cups of coffee a day can only do so much. And what I find to be the hardest, especially in those newborn stages, is kind of 2 things. So it's one, the interrupted sleep that parents are getting, especially if they're waking their child up every couple of hours to keep feeding, per the pediatrician's request. But it's also just, the changes in general, like especially if baby's like in the room with you, like I was saying before, active sleep is a part of baby's sleep cycle. Like they're going to experience that every single night. So it's a big shift. And plus being on constantly during the day and the stress and the anxiety of taking care of another life. So yeah, the sleep deprivation is just it's everything. And it's kind of why I got into doing what I do as well. So you tell people, oh, I'm going to have a baby. And one of the first things that you hear more often than not is, well, you better sleep now, because once the baby is here, you're not going to get any sleep. So that's just something that I knew that wasn't going to work for me in particular, especially wanting to have such a special bond and enjoy the time that I have with the newborn, because the phase is so fleeting. So it's just, yeah, it's everything.
Yeah, well, I stopped sleeping once I got pregnant. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
there's
Mhm.
no free front loading sleep before you have your kid.
Yes.
It's a wonder because you're so debilitated when you're sleep deprived. It's just a wonder that our species survived at all because like it's you're working through like mommy fog anyway from your hormones being
Mhm.
imbalanced and sleep deprivation because you're not sleeping more than whatever 30-90 minutes at a go and it's just like evolutionarily, like, why? Why would that
Mhm.
happen? It doesn't even make any sense.
Oh my gosh, I know. I can completely relate. And I feel like a lot of the families I work with as well, they're just like, is this normal? Am I supposed to feel like this? And well, some of it, especially in like the newborn stages, like might not be totally avoidable. There is something that like there is an end in sight. And this isn't something that parents have to suffer through for an extended a period of time. And Yeah, that's what I just want everyone to know, really.
They keep having children, in which case, like one
Exactly. It's
starts
the
you over.
amnesia. Like you just forget eventually. Maybe you forget like the feeling in the moment, but you'll never forget how hard it is. Mhm.
So now I'm going to ask you something that's a little bit more of a hot button issue. Does sleep training cause emotional damage or attachment issues?
No, no. And I think sleep training in that sense also is there's such a wide range of it. And this is also something that I kind of want to debunk here as well, where parents think sleep training is cry it out. And while of course cry it out, like the, traditional extinction method where you put baby in the room, say goodnight, see you tomorrow, close the door, open it when they're supposed to wake up. That is one form of sleep training, but I think especially the way that I work, like I work super gently and as hands-on as parents want to be as well, where it's like maybe crying is inevitable for, babies. It's their way of communicating, but it's like we're not letting babies cry for an extended amount of time and any longer than, as parents we feel comfortable. So, no, even if they were crying, like there's no biological or there's no, it's not going to lead to like psychological harm as well.
Interesting. What is the best method to sleep train a child?
Whatever works best for the family. That's what I say. I don't care what the method is. It's whatever the parents can do consistently and confidently. Because if you're not doing something confidently, you're not going to be able to do it consistently. And if you're not doing something consistently, we're not going to see results, especially like in the time that we want. And now, what that method is, the way I do it is like I work really holistically. I like to get to know the parents, I get to know the child, I get to know their routines, their lifestyles, their habits, their bedtimes, what time the family goes to sleep, all of these different things. And from there, we can identify the issues of their current sleep. And then from there, figure out a plan to address those issues and help everybody get more sleep up as a result of it.
Amazing. When is the right time to sleep train?
Yep, that's a good question as well. So I work with families anywhere from 10 weeks to 10 years. Again, huge range, and it looks very different working with a 10-week-old versus a 10-year-old. But there, by 10 weeks, like that's when we kind of see the circadian rhythm developing, and we're kind of able to see the results of sleep training as well, and baby's able to understand patterns and routines a little bit more. And then, of course, like all the way through 10 years, the issues are very different that we see. But then it becomes a lot of communication and kind of adjusting the method based on the age at first. But even with that, I want to say there's a lot we can be doing in those first 10 weeks as well, kind of setting our newborns up for success and starting with something as simple as an eat, play, sleep routine. So that's it. I mean, it doesn't have to overcomplicate it, but just helping baby little by little.
Awesome. So, can parents sleep train and still breastfeed? And I was a breastfeeding mom, and so I know that you got to drain those breasts. Like they build up and it hurts and they get engorged, and you got like, so, if you're sleep training again, you were talking about not waking up your child, um,
Mhm.
when they're asleep. So, how does that work?
Yes, totally. And as another breastfeeding my mother myself, I was fortunate enough to do it beyond the first year too. I can first of all answer the question that yes, it is possible to sleep train and still continue to nurse your child. And in terms of like waking up your child in the night to feed, first I'd say like talk to your pediatrician. If pediatrician says like you still need to wake up, baby, follow their guidelines. Nothing I say here is medical advice. It's just more. I get it. So that's why I say like we listen to our pediatrician. If pediatrician says wake up, we continue to wake up. But in terms of like the engorged breasts, um, unfortunately, there is still like we'll still probably wake up in the night even if baby doesn't, and you could pump or if you do want to wake your child, you can. It's just about getting them back to sleep independently as well. And that's tricky too, because of course, like the sucking motion is a soothing motion for the baby. So it is pretty inevitable, especially in the middle of the night, that baby will fall asleep while nursing. So I always recommend, especially to my breastfeeding mothers, like you could just rub their forehead a little, tickle their feet, kind of help them at least get two eyeballs open before putting them back down after the feed.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is that? You don't want them to be asleep on the breast and get conditioned to sleep, needing to sleep while
Yeah.
breastfeeding?
Again, if it works for your family, if you don't mind that, and if it works, please continue to do it. It's just what I'll see sometimes is like parents calling me saying, my baby's now waking up every hour or two. I don't need to feed them every hour or two, but I have to feed them because they need it to go back to sleep. So it's
Yeah,
just kind of building the habit and the association that they don't need to necessarily be eating to sleep if, again, if it's not working for your family. And if
gotcha.
it's not, medically required.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
So, how long should naps be? And I guess for, well, this would be for the little ones. And should they be, should they, I'm going to try that again. All right. How long should naps be, and should they always happen in a crib?
Great question. Nap lengths may vary, again, based on the child. This is something that my rule of thumb with naps is let's see if after baby wakes up, like if they're fussing versus crying. If they're fussing, maybe they'll fall back to sleep themselves. Let's let them be for a few minutes. If baby is crying and you're like they're awake or it's time to feed them again, we'll cut the nap there. But I always like to give the baby a chance to fall back to sleep after waking up from a nap if in case they need it versus just jumping in and cutting the nap from the start. Um, and then what was the other question?
Should they always be done in a
Right.
crib?
Oh, yes, yes. So thank you. So in terms of crib naps, my rule of thumb for that is at least one crib nap per day. That's it. The other, especially like for the newborns, if they want contact naps, stroller naps when it's, nice weather out, please go for it. But I think one nap a day, from what I've seen at least, is enough practice to kind of help the baby get used to it and kind of get into the habit of napping and sleeping in their sleep space.
So, this next question is very much related to my experience as a mom. What do you recommend if the baby only naps when held or in motion, such as a car seat, stroller, or rocking chair? And my husband, I can't tell you how many times he had to put my son in the car seat and drive around the neighborhood just to get him asleep.
Yes, it's so funny. My daughter is the opposite. Like she will not nap in the car for anything. She will not sleep in the car. It could be like regardless, and it drives me nuts as well. But I'll take that as is. But yeah, for babies who can only nap in motion, I'd say just try to not try to just you can even start especially if it's a newborn just like try holding. You could just hold your baby. They still have the contact. They still have like you right there and the support. And then I'd say little by little, or depending on how the baby responds, we could try, starting the nap in the crib and just kind of rubbing the belly and shushing and being super hands-on still without the motion aspect of it. Um, or, we could also maybe sometimes babies like are okay with this space and they surprise us. So again, this kind of like goes back to like what sleep training approach is the right one. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's whatever works for your family and however your baby responds the best.
How can parents get better sleep while still responding to their baby at night?
Yep, great question. So a lot of this kind of ties back to, the independent sleep training that I was mentioning before. And I think by the time parents come to me, a lot of them have been suffering for sometimes years, and just thinking that this is like the new norm and this is what they have to do. But I think finding a method and an approach that works for your child and being able to do it consistently, parents are able to see results sometimes within the first night alone, but usually I always tell families like give it like 3 to 4 nights. I work with families on a 2 week basis just because I like 2 weekends in there as well because I want to be able to coach parents through real life. But I'd say like even if you're able to do something, give it a week at first. I think that you'll see some results. And of course, that's where I come in also. If you don't know where to start or what to do, I'm always happy to help families like find what the approach that works for them.
Can you give me just a few examples of different approaches that might be available to parents?
Yeah, so I kind of, like
Mm.
I said, like I work really holistically. So I like to take in a few different things into consideration. First, age appropriate methods and techniques. Um, Second, families' lifestyle and preferences. Also, I work with a lot of families who live in an apartment and space is confined, and maybe they have like a 2 or 3 year old in the room with them. So, working with kind of the environment that we have as well and child's preferences as well because some children have like different sleep needs or different uh yeah, just like different comfort needs in general as well. So working anywhere from like super hands-on, kind of what I was saying before, like the most hands-on I would ever say for like a newborn who needs to be rocked or needs the motion, I'd say just start by just sitting and holding your baby. That's step one. And that's still so hands-on and so much support. And you could shush and you vocalize and have that physical touch as well. So I go from anywhere from that to the older kids. I use a lot of communication, and I really focus on the communication and play as well, especially for like the toddlers and getting them involved in the process as well. So really thinking about the whole range of super hands-on to maybe a little more hands-off to even giving the child some ownership and accountability through the process as well and making them feel really, really part of it.
Amazing. Are night feedings necessary after a certain age?
After a certain age, after the pediatrician says, you got the check mark that you're good to go, night feedings are not necessarily necessary. I think a lot of times, especially as like, we move into the toddler years, we'll get the toddlers, knocking on the parents' door, being like, "I'm hungry, like I'm thirsty." And I think what I've found is a lot of times these are just little excuses versus biological needs to actually be hungry. And it's more about like boundary setting, communication than actually feeding your child in the middle of the night.
Amazing. How should parents navigate sleep regressions at 4, 6, 8 to 10, and 18 months?
That is a huge question. So first, I want to start by talking a little bit about like what a regression is, and just by starting by saying like again, every child handles these regressions differently. And especially if your child goes into them having the independent sleep skills, having the confidence, having the comfort in their sleep space, we see these regressions, and I use like little air quotes for that as um, either non-existent or pretty smooth, maybe small interruptions versus like a catastrophic, my baby can't sleep anymore, they forget how to do it. So with that being said, a regression also is more of a like progression. It's when babies are and to children and toddlers are, because they can go up to 18 months, as you said, it's really big developmental periods. And it's when their brains are working overtime to learn a new skill or just really, develop in general. So a lot of times what we'll see is like my favorite one is when babies learn to clap. And it becomes this like sometimes this like big thing where it's like babies will just wake up and start clapping and it's so cute, but it interrupts sleep so much when really it's just babies learning a new skill. So a lot of times these are like little phases, but with that also because they are such developmental changes, it's kind of like the new normal in a sense. So what's really important for parents to do is remain consistent at any age. Remain really consistent. Give your child the space to kind of get themselves back to sleep or figure it out versus just like jumping to kind of save the day. And that's really, really hard too, because sometimes a band-aid is a lot easier than solving the problem. So a lot of times it is a lot easier to kind of going back to what we were saying before, nurse your child to sleep after they haven't nursed to sleep in months, or rock your child to sleep after they haven't needed it in months. But really, this is just a little bit of a band-aid to cover up like this is a big change and your child's going through a lot. So how can we be consistent, give them the space to kind of get back on track while also supporting their development and their growth?
Amazing. What is the best way for parents to handle early morning wakings?
Great question as well. So this has a bunch of different parts. So there are a few things that I look at here. One is overall sleep schedule, kind of thinking about how much sleep your child is getting in a 24-hour period. Sometimes, like an early morning wake up could just be they've had enough sleep and that's it. And this is where we have to look at, let's think about naps for the day. Let's think about their wake windows. What are you doing in these wake windows? And for those who haven't heard of the term wake windows, it's the time between naps when a child is awake. I like to keep them light and fun and bright and lively. So child is getting a lot of stimulation to make sure that they're able to be tired enough, which is kind of a silly thing to say, to sleep through the night. So thinking about nap schedules, wake windows, bedtimes, that's a huge portion of it. The other big portion of it is thinking about how they're falling asleep at the start of the night. Like what we've been talking about, like if they need the emotion, if they need to feed, if they need, parents help. And if they're just waking up early at whatever, and I use the term early as anytime before your family's desired wake time, if they're waking up early, how are we responding? Is it because like they're just not able to, they're not comfortable enough to get themselves back to sleep yet? Or is it something else? So it's just basically a night waking that's earlier in the morning versus middle of the night. Um, so yeah, how we're responding to them is huge. Scheduling is huge. How they're falling asleep is huge. And going back to how we're responding to them, a lot of times like night wakings are really tricky because it could be after a child's had a lot of sleep, like enough sleep, but maybe, they need another hour or so. But it's like if we wake up like 10 minutes before our alarm, like it's the most frustrating thing in the world. And this is kind of like how it is for the babies and the children as well, where it's like, oh, like I wish I could sleep for another hour, but like getting my body back to sleep is really, it's not so easy right now. So, giving our child a little bit of space before running in. Also, like, with newborns and toddlers and infants in particular, if they see like a parent come in to the room, either like with a bottle or not with a bottle or anything like that, like they could think it's like time to eat, or they can think it's time to play, and they could think their day is starting. So just like having that other person come in, it's like, all right, it's time to start the day, and they don't really know anything else. That's why I always say, like, give a few minutes, see how they are. If it's a fuss, if they're just kind of like getting comfortable, then maybe they'll fall back to sleep. But if it's like a full cry and like, or they're just up and ready to start the day, like I like to think about all those things.
So for sleep training, do you recommend that children, and I think you've been saying that's really different for every family, but just to get more clarity, are you recommending that, this cycle of feeding, playing, I forgot that the four things you said that goes over and over again, like happen at the same time of day every day? Or is it really waiting for the child to be tired enough to need a nap that they're being put down to?
Mhm. Great question. Great question. So I think this is kind of like a two-part answer. I'd say the whole eat, play, sleep routine is great for the newborns and great for the infants. Toddlers, not so much, especially like as they start dropping to like one or two naps. They're going to need more than one or two feeds in a day. So it's kind of responding to those needs and their cues. And cues are a huge, huge portion of what I do too, because I think a lot of times, like what parents will do is like they'll get really caught up in like the wake windows of it. And these are, what Google might say, like, oh, your child has to be awake for an hour and this is it, and then they have to take a nap, versus like thinking about maybe your child needs more awake time or less awake time. So thinking about how they are, if they're showing signs of like rubbing their eyes or yawning or having those like, red eyebrows, anything that might signal to us like, okay, my baby's tired and ready for a nap, versus just like looking at a clock or an app that says now is when your baby should fall asleep. So thinking about those cues, to me, are most important. Yeah.
What do you recommend parents do to manage their sleep when both partners are working and exhausted?
Yes, great question. This is so tough. This is so, so hard. And I think this is something that like a lot of families face, especially like families with two working parents. So it kind of depends on the family's preferences as well. So what I'll hear sometimes is parents will alternate wake ups, where one parent might take one wake up and then the next wake up, the other parent takes, or one might take one night and then they alternate the nights, and sometimes they split the nights. So what I usually recommend to families, especially as they're kind of in the sleep training process and they're experiencing these middle of the night wakings or early wake ups, is parents like turn to each other and just say, like, you know, scale from 1 to 10. How are you right now? And kind of whoever is more emotionally ready to handle the interactions with the child is who I'd recommend. And this is not just because of the parents getting more rest, but it's also I find that if a parent is able to go in and kind of show up for the child with a more calm state, the child is able to kind of emotionally co-regulate with the parent and actually fall asleep faster, versus keeping both parents up and everybody in the house being so frustrated. And this is hard. This is really, really hard. And it's something that's so common as well. So I like to do a little gut check. But also, if you're waking up and you're like, I'm a zero and I'm a zero, that's when I'd say you can kind of think about like, okay, well, who did it last? And think about like the alternating of it.
So one of the things that is recommended, commonly recommended, is that for parents to sleep when their children take when they take a nap, you take a nap as well. And for me, what was really hard about that is like that's when I get things done, right? Like
Yes,
I do the
that's you
dishes or get the
time.
clothes the laundry, like that's when I
Hmm.
answer emails and I do things. So if I'm napping, then because it's impossible to do anything other than care for your baby when they're awake
Yes.
because they, especially when they're very young, they can't do anything else, right? So,
Mm-mm.
so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think sleep when the baby sleeps is not realistic. I mean, to your point, when do you have time for yourself then? And I think having like parental mental health is critical as well. I think it's as important as getting enough sleep, and they go hand in hand, and you can't have one without the other really. So prioritizing yourself is also really important. And sometimes self-care might be sleeping when the baby sleeps, but realistically, you're not napping, especially in the newborn stages, like 5 times a day. You can use, one of those naps is a nap, and if you need it, but otherwise, I always say, do something around the house. Like do something if you've been staring at like a pile of unopened mail for a week and it's driving you crazy, take a little time to open your mail or do something for yourself. Again, like especially with the newborns who take all these naps, a lot of them are like a lot of shorter, more frequent naps. So I'd say like take one of those naps and just like get yourself ready. Take a shower, brush your teeth, make yourself a meal. So prioritizing yourself and whatever you may be needing in that moment for the naps.
Oh. What's the best way to catch up on lost sleep if you're not necessarily napping when your child's napping?
Yes, that's a great question as well. While catching up on lost sleep is not super possible for parents, um, kind of figuring out a routine for yourself also to help get you more sleep is important. And this might be an early bedtime for some parents, and this might mean napping during the day. Or what I think is also super important is kind of calling on your village and having a network and having some support, whether it's family, friends, neighbors, just being able to lighten the burden off of yourself, because I think some of it is not getting enough sleep, but the other part of it is kind of like losing yourself in the process and losing the things that once made you feel energized and made you feel really good. So being able to kind of call upon people, or if you have another partner in the home as well, being able to communicate with each other and delegate the responsibilities and just find time to kind of fill your cup in that process. And not your coffee cup. Sometimes your coffee cup, but also just prioritizing yourself.
Fill your bucket of coffee. No, kidding.
I love it.
What role do screens, lighting, and noise play in sleep
Hmm.
quality?
That's a great question. So they all kind of play a different role. I'd say I'll start with noise because this is something that I recommend from the start, especially with the newborns, kind of having a noise machine, whether it's white noise, green noise, brown noise. They've got all the noises, every color these days, but just having a sound playing while your child is sleeping is really important because one, it kind of, especially the white noise and like the swooshing noises replicate the womb noises. So even coming out, like this is something that's calming and soothing to them. Not only that, but as your child gets older into like the infant and toddler and big kid stages too, there's, especially living in a city, for instance, like there's so much noise around you. And I'm in an apartment right now, so it's like you can never control what's going on outside or even in your home. Like if you're cooking dinner after your child's asleep, you might drop a pot or a pan. And what the noise does, it kind of helps that consistent sleep environment. It kind of helps drown out any other background noises that might startle your child awake. So I think noise is great to an extent if it's like a consistent noise. Um, if you're playing like loud music while your child is trying to sleep, I'd say turn it down a little bit. But yeah, I love like a sound machine in the room for sleep. Now, in terms of screens and lights, this is also really big. So I'll go with light next, because again, like they're all very different. So I love the contrast of light versus dark. I keep going back to like the newborn stages, but the circadian rhythm isn't developed in the first 3 months. So what we can do as parents is help by keeping daytime light and bright and keeping nighttime really dark and dim. And this I carry out all throughout, newborn, infant, toddler, big kid stages because the light is it plays a huge role in kind of like the stimulation that your body is taking in during the day and also the relaxation that your body can feel at night. So my rule of thumb is again, keep light daytime and wake times light, bright, fun. You can play your music then. But then when it comes to nighttime, um, I keep the room dim and kind of try to stay like in the room that your child is sleeping in. So especially like for toddlers as well, kind of go like thinking about toddlers, they might need a lot more time to kind of wind down from the day. And of course, like, when you can go from like having an infant who you could just plop down and they fall asleep wherever to having a toddler who's running around and taking everything in and learning and growing and all of this. So I like to say at least like 30 minutes before you want your toddler to go to sleep, kind of keep the lights dim, keep it really like boring. This is where you can play like your sound machine, but keeping like, low volume, low lights, de-stress, de-stimulate from the day. And then again, once the morning comes, you can open those shades and it's time to start. And also with that, like babies and infants like need 12 hours of like daytime to kind of help them sleep through the night as well. So that's just a little bit of a tip. So keep it making sure like those 12 hours outside of nap times are light and bright. And screens. I didn't even get to screens.
Screens.
The screens is huge, especially as your child is getting into those toddler and big kid stages, and especially once they start discovering Miss Rachel and cartoons and everything like that. And they might be begging for TV. And also for parents, a lot of times it's like it's easy, especially as you're cooking dinner, just turn the TV on and have your child like sit. I always recommend, again, like kind of going back to my 30-minute rule for toddlers, no screens within like 30 minutes to an hour before bed. But with that, also thinking about what your child is watching before bed, if they are watching TV, between the dinner time, bedtime time frame. Because if it's something that's energetic and lively and action, that's also going to stimulate them more versus what we're trying to do, which is relax the body and help them kind of get into this sleep stage versus play and action stage.
What about for parents and screens?
Oh, I'm no expert on parent sleep, but of course, like I've read into it as well because I think a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this too. It's parents after a long day of parenting, you're tired and you're exhausted, and it's again going back to like finding time for yourself. Like a lot of parents, like it's not so easy to find time, so it's so easy to get into the habit of getting in bed and scrolling or watching TV to relax. And again, I use that in air quotes because this isn't so relaxing because the blue light like will keep you up. And again, just like especially the scrolling, and it's like every 10 seconds it's something new, and this is really stimulating for the brain. So it can actually make it harder to fall asleep versus more relaxing and easier to fall asleep.
What would you say to parents that feel anxious at bedtime even when their baby is asleep? And this is another thing that I felt as a parent because there is such I was just drilled in being my age. There's such a push to have parents understand SIDS.
Mm,
I was terrified my kid was going to just stop breathing during the night. And so
hmm
in like I had him in the same room with us for at least like the first month or two before we moved him into his own room. And like he was talking about active sleep and making the little noises or whatnot, like I would like train myself like any shift, any rollover, any snoot, sniffle or any sound, whatever, I would wake up. And I was just so terrified of it. So, so what would you say to parents that feel anxious at bedtime even when their baby's asleep?
Yeah, it's so hard. It is. And I completely empathize for parents because a lot of that also goes into parents not having enough sleep. And once you don't have enough sleep, like anxiety is heightened and your mind just wanders and goes crazy. And it's all unfortunately so common for the postpartum. And I feel like this is something that people don't talk about it a lot either. It's just like the postpartum anxiety in addition to postpartum depression. So a lot of it is trust and time, unfortunately. And again, kind of getting yourself some more rest and doing stuff for yourself as well to kind of help ease the anxiety. This is another great time to talk to somebody, whether it's a therapist or a family member or someone that you can trust to kind of get these emotions out. I think mothers in particular carry or primary parents in particular, like carry a huge burden where they feel like the entire weight of this child physically and metaphorically is on them. And they think that it is 100% their responsibility, like this one person's responsibility to keep this child alive, for lack of a better term. And while it is to a certain extent, it's also not. You hopefully you have partners or support system or someone that you're able to talk to. But with that also, knowledge is power, but it's also really, really scary. So I think if you're familiar with like the safe sleep and the safe sleep concepts and like, the ABCs of sleep, trusting that as well. I think a lot of parents also will like turn to devices and different things to monitor a child like breathing and sleeping and all of this. And sometimes with that too, if it's something that's keeping you up at night or what I look for with parents that I work with is if they're, sending me minute by minute plays of the night and their child sleep. Like this is something that where it's like, let's talk to like maybe there's a therapist that we can work with to kind of help with the anxiety of it. But yeah, it's very tough. And I do empathize.
Do you recommend sleep aids or supplements such as melatonin for adult or young children?
Great question. I don't really recommend anything. Kind of, I'm not like I don't give medical advice. I do always like if parents come to me and ask questions about this, I always say like talk to a medical provider, whether it's your doctor, a pediatrician. But typically, I do not, especially with like the younger kids. I feel that a lot of times parents might come to me and say like, oh, maybe they just need melatonin, where it's like, no, maybe they just need help getting more comfortable and confident in their sleep space, and maybe let's try helping them, with our skills before we jump to medication. But yes.
If sleep deprived parents take one thing away from this conversation, what would you like for it to be?
That's a great question. What do I want to see? The one thing that I just want to stress is you don't have to like sleep isn't a luxury. Like it is a necessity. Like you don't have to be sleep deprived to also be responding to your child's needs. You don't have to be sleep deprived for your child to sleep, and you don't have to be sleep deprived to be, the best parent that you can be. I think that these two things can be true at once, and you can help your child sleep while helping yourself. And a lot of this is just finding a way that works for you. And also with that, I want to just stress that sleep training does not mean cry it out, because I feel like that's what I hear a lot too. I think by the time that parents come to me, I think I mentioned this earlier too, it's like they've kind of like they've tried it all. And this is something I hear too. Like I've tried everything. I've rocked, I've fed, I've played music, I've done this. And like I have parents come to me sometimes saying things that I've never even heard of because it's like the more it's desperation, quite frankly. And it's so relatable. I've been there and it's the hardest thing in the world. So you're not alone. If you feel like this is, you know, the new norm, but also not sustainable, like let's talk. And where I would never, suggest a parent does an approach, just a blanket approach or something that they can find on the internet just because it works. I want to find something that not only works, but you feel really, really good about. I mean, I've had parents come to me and they say, I could finally enjoy my maternity leave. Like, you've saved my marriage. My child has been sleeping in our bed for 10 full years, and now we have our bed back. And it's not something that you have to continue if it doesn't work for you anymore. And if it served you at one point and doesn't serve you now, that is completely normal and that's okay. And we're still here to support your child and also help you live the life that you'd like to live.
But this has been so fascinating. Again, I wish I knew you back when my child was little. Like, definitely could have used your help. But how can people get in contact with you if they have any questions?
Thank you. So my website is www.zsbyzales.com. That's ZZZS zales.com. That's where you can find information about like packages that I offer. You can also schedule your first call with me. I start every consultation with a free 15-minute discovery call. I want to make sure I'm the right fit for you. And I want to just make sure that, like, this is where we kind of talk about your child's sleep habits, identify issues, and we talk about like my initial thoughts and kind of what we can expect working together. There's also my Instagram. It's Z's by Zales, at Z's by Zales, so at ZZZS by Zales. I post little tips and Q&As and more fun things there. And yeah, those are the best two ways.
Yay, perfect. Well, thank you for your time today. And I'm sure you saved lots more marriages and maternity leaves with all the information that you've given us today.
Oh, well, thank you. I can only hope so. And I want to stress again, if anyone out there is kind of resonating with anything I've said, or you hear yourself in this message, I would love to talk to you and I'd be happy to work with you as well.
Yay, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for tuning into A Parent's Guide to Child Development, where we decode milestones, demystify meltdowns, and occasionally question whether goldfish crackers count as a food group. Spoiler, they do. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an expert tip, breakthrough strategy, or aha moment that can make a big difference in your child's development. It's cheaper than therapy and less messy than glitter slime. We'll be back soon with more expert advice, real talk, and zero judgment. Until then, keep calm and try not to step on any Legos.